Join me for the scripture today. It is Matthew 2, 1 through 12. I know you've already figured out what the story is based on all the other things we talked about in church today, but if you were at church on Christmas Eve and we did the impromptu human drama of the nativity play, you might have remembered that I said the wise men hadn't shown up yet. But because we love Christian tradition, and we had Nikki, who was all dressed and wanting to be a wise man, actually, for those of you who weren't there, little Nicholas, who's 4 years old, announced he wanted to be God at the children's play. And I said it didn't matter what I said that night, because at home on Christmas morning, everybody was going to talk about Nikki wanting to be God, right? And my response to God was, we all feel that way sometimes, right? That we want to be God. So Nicky was our wise man, and he wore a Burger King crown, and he carried a basket to offer his gift to God, the baby girl who represented Jesus that night. I mentioned that the wise men weren't in the story because we were in Luke on Christmas Eve. And Luke has the beautiful story about the shepherds and the angels, right? And that's where Luke's story is. But Matthew, you may have remembered, and I have said many times, is our more Jewish gospel. That Matthew makes sure that we understand that there are prophecies in the Hebrew Bible that are being fulfilled by Jesus. And so our scripture today is found in Matthew. It's the only gospel that we hear this story of the Magi. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and we have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him. And calling together the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. And they told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.' Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them that the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem and saying, 'Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage.' And when they'd heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over a place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another way." And of course, not included in our text today is, as Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. The rest of the story says that King Herod was so afraid of the birth of the new king that the children, the boys under the age of 2, had been killed, or he ordered them killed, the boys under the age of 2. There are things that we believe about the wise men arriving at the birth of Jesus that probably have become part of our culture that are probably not true. Certain things like the fact that there are exactly 3 wise men. Now, if you think about it, these are men who clearly have a lot of possessions and are rich and have value. And we tend to think there are 3 wise men because there were 3 gifts. And that makes sense to consider that. But the reality is that those wise men probably would not be safe traveling alone anywhere, right? They probably had protection, guards, and probably servants who made sure they were fed, who put up their tent to sleep in for the night, who took care of them. And so, as so often our artwork depicts these three men alone on their camels arriving, we probably should surround them with all the people that served them and took care of them and protected them. So this is one of the things that we've lost in our cultural tradition about the wise men. Another thing which is so clear in our picture today is that we typically have them in Arabian dress. They've come from the east. But now scholars typically believe that they probably came from Babylon. That Babylon was the seat of astronomical studies, and it was common for the Magi and these people who studied the stars to go and visit kings, right? Important kings. Studying the stars was not something that everyone did at the time. Most people were just eking out their living, providing for themselves and their loved ones, going about their business and doing their jobs. Now, I can't imagine that the stars were not a part of their life, right? For those of us who have heating and air conditioning and we spend all our time inside and we isolate our conditions around what makes us comfortable, we lose something because we do not sleep under the stars. Kevin gave the perfect example of when you sleep outside, you are completely aware of the stars. You're aware of the sounds of the night, of all of those things that we do not hear anymore because of the heat and the air conditioning sounds that soothe us to sleep at night, right? I don't know if you're a person that loves to camp or hates to camp. I would have to admit, I'm a hate to camper myself. As much as I feel closer to God when I am outside, when it is time to sleep, I don't want to be outside. I hate those noises. I lay awake all night listening to the sounds of the noises of the night. And then I'm mean and cranky all the next day because I didn't get any rest. I'm a girl that likes a cabin when I camp. I'm not one who enjoys being under the stars for sleeping. But there is something beautiful about a more primitive culture where we are more in tune with the earth, right? As the seasons change and the temperatures change, people used to, in primitive cultures, they would migrate as an entire community and they would pack up their belongings and they would move to warmer climate or cooler climate. The whole concept of Mother Earth and creation was alive and well in their lives. And that's something that I think we have lost in our world today. We isolate ourselves from our connection with creation. The other thing that I want you to think about on the story is that Matthew clearly says they arrive at the house. They're no longer in a manger. We have no idea what the time is. It's been debated in biblical history and scholars who come up with an answer. At one time, scholarship thought in order for them to travel from the Arabian area, it probably took 2 years for them to get to see the baby. And that he would no longer be living in the manger, which was a temporary dwelling for his family. But if we move their travel away and get it a little closer to Babylon, that he probably is much younger. But the reality is, it doesn't matter how old he is. It doesn't really matter how far they traveled. Or like Kevin so clearly pointed out, it doesn't really matter what day we celebrate the birth of Christ. But what matters is, what do we learn as people who seek God in our world today? I read this interesting book where this woman described her spiritual and religious experience as a buffet, right? as we learn more and more and more about the Eastern cultures. Or if we could just simply look it up in the internet or talk to our neighbor, there's this whole wealth of things that we never have considered in Christian history. People meditate more. They participate in yoga, which used to be a completely Eastern activity. They will go to monasteries in a way and not speak for a month at a time. It's just like we have this culture of people that are yearning for God, seeking for this relationship, and they can't seem to find Him. They try all these newfangled things and all of these experimenting in ways, and they love to say, I am spiritual, but not religious. And it's really a shame, because that means they've walked away from the church and said, I can't find God there. Right? So now I've got to look at all of these places, participate in all of these things, because I have this deep yearning to know my Creator. And this beautiful story of the Magi, as they studied the stars and they traveled to visit important kings. This is who we are. We are the Magi, looking for the star, hoping that we find our way to know God, to be in relationship with Jesus, to be changed in a way that transforms who we are as the people of God. Herod misses it, right? He doesn't know that a star has appeared. He has no idea that this is happening. And until the Magi tell him that a new king has been born, he has no inkling of what's going on. It takes the Magi to tell him that the baby was born. And so often, I think we are like Herod. We're so busy in our busyness and in our importance and in our daily lives and in our trying to get by that we don't ever look for the stars. We don't ever seek out the one who makes us whole. We don't take the risk to take the travel or the trip or to make the change in our lives that connects us to God. In the Catholic tradition, they have a day that they recognize as the Day of Innocence, where they remember that all of those children died because of the one, because of Herod's fear and Herod's worry that he would be usurped as the king. Things that have nothing to do with who Jesus was or the fact that he changed the way we see and hear the word Messiah. The wise men in Matthew are the only people that are from somewhere else, are the other. They're outside the culture in which Jesus moves. And for many people, this little piece of the story in Matthew is the one that says that the Gentiles are welcome to worship Jesus. That these strange people from another place who are not good Jews, who do not live and work around Jesus and his family, that they too recognize the Messiah. And so today, as you start a new year, I ask you, are you Herod or are you a wise man?